One of the key moments in Hegel's phenomenology of spirit is the section on self-consciousness, when he makes the interesting point that when we think of ourselves, when we think of the I, suddenly we've objectified the I. We've almost put it outside ourself. Because from what perspective are we looking at ourselves? How can this I be ourselves when we're looking at it from the outside, wherever we are? And this is a key example of Hegel's method in the phenomenology of taking a common sense concept or perception and showing how it contains strange contradictions, strange paradoxes within it that have to be grappled with in a different way. Ultimately, Hegel will take this on to try and transcend the old problem of solipsism, of how do we know there are other minds outside our own and so on, by almost melting away this whole problem of the stable self that we are, by bringing this contradiction to the surface. Now, this is an aspect of Hegel that the notorious psychoanalyst Jacques Lacan would bring out further. He famously would be part of this whole decentering of the subject that much of French theory following World War II would bring to the fore. He would question whether we had this stable self at all. His whole project was seeking to explain or uncover how our very sense of self is illusory. It's a reflection of the society around us, of language, of words that others have already used, of structures that we're born into. And it's not hard to see how Lacan's elaboration of these ideas could be picked up on by Marxist theorists. For a long-standing problem for Marxist theory has been to try and explain how changes in the economic base of a society can affect a cultural superstructure. Things that seem so far apart. Where do you get your subsistence from? Where do you get your money from? To the music that a society creates, the kind of novels it writes. How on earth are these things related? For Marx and Marxist theorists, of course, this is very much in keeping with Hegel's questioning of common sense connections. But still, the question has to arise, is there a reasonable way of making these connections at all? At first glance, the Freudian theory of the unconscious could hold some promise, because if we're always doing things for reasons we're unaware of, well, that's a very handy way of describing how cultural factors and actions and products can unconsciously be influenced by material forces and realities. But then you're stuck with the difficulty of saying what the unconscious is exactly. For Freud, it seems to be almost this space within our minds, but how can we demonstrate that? Or, how can we affirm that to be the case? And so Lacan is useful in providing a new way to mediate between material factors and psychological factors, cultural superstructures, even if he didn't go there quite himself. We might think this sounds a bit like Jung's idea of the collective unconscious, this idea that there is a sort of unconscious mind shared by maybe even humankind as a whole throughout history. But I think what Lacan would do that's very different is he would question this idea of stable archetypes, as Jung expounded, archetypes that persist through different cultures, different times in history. For Lacan, that's highly questionable because he's very much focused on language as being what we ultimately share. As he famously said, the unconscious is like a language. Language is not something personal to each of us. Its meanings slip and slide around beyond our individual minds, as it were. We are born into the use of language that other people have given us. And this is where Lacan's ideas of the signifier and signified sort of slipping around kind of makes sense, his view of the unconscious. Language is something that's never quite within our conscious grasp. It's doing something beyond what we think are our own intentions. And so various Marxist theorists have made use of Lacan in this way. Althusser, for example, picked up on Lacan, but most famously Slavoj Žižek. His three big influences are Hegel, Marx, and Lacan. Now, I can't pretend to have read much Žižek, but I'm not sure if I need to see the usefulness of Lacan and his concepts in mediating, in explaining things that beforehand were perhaps hard to express. For me, the connection between these figures has come more by way of Frederick Jameson, who I've frequently brought up on this channel. And I think his work is a very fruitful source of ideas, of tools to use these thinkers, maybe in ways that for purposes that they were not thinking of themselves. But together, I think these three thinkers provide a very powerful way of analysing culture, of analysing our place within society and within history.